Good evening and welcome to a regular select board meeting. It's Monday, March 15th, 2021. I'll start by reading a script that we have about remote, having a remote meeting. And I'm the select board chair, Tom Lacusa. I'll be confirming that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Steve Morantz.
Here.
Richard Foster.
Here.
And Mark Gold.
Here.
Mark Strange is not going to be with us tonight. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Lynn Simmons.
Here.
Paul Pasterzik.
Here.
And it's Mike.
Yeah, I'm here.
And you have to pronounce your last name. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Mike Barbieri.
Barbieri, that's right. Thanks, Mr. Barbieri. I apologize for not having your name down here. And
No
our
worries.
anticipated speakers, we have Fire Chief John Dearborn.
Yes, Tom, he's here. I have him in the attendee group still until it's an agenda item.
Okay, great. So this open meeting of the Longmeadow Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth, which is now a year old. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you find posted with this agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. The Longmeadow Select Board is convening by Zoom webinar as posted in the town's website and identifying how the public may join. There is no chat or Q&A function for this meeting. For resident comments, using the Zoom webinar format, the public are attendees. If a member of the public would like to speak during the resident comment, please use the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. The meeting moderator will unmute you and give you permission to speak. And if you joined by the webinar by your phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. Members of the public who wish to speak will identify their names and addresses only. Each individual is afforded 3 minutes for comment. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. All the materials for this meeting are available on the agenda posted on longmeadow.org. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude the remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. So as we open this meeting, we will start with a COVID-19 announcement by Chief Dearborn.
Thanks, I just moved him in, so, yep.
Okay.
Got me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. I went to Mars there for a minute. Good evening. I'll keep this real short because I know you have a full agenda. Our community numbers continue to decrease. We're, as of last Thursday, we're at 16 active cases. Percent positivity was at 0.132%. We're still in the yellow, but our numbers are rapidly declining. With that said, I still ask the community to keep their guard up, still maintain all the practices that we're well aware of. We are still seeing a few new cases here and there. As far as the vaccine clinic, we completed both our first and second doses for all the vaccine that was allotted. We have submitted for a couple special projects. One particular is to service our homebound residents, which we have a list for that. That plan was submitted last Thursday. We haven't heard back on that, but no one else has heard back on their plans either from the state. So I think it'll be a little while, unfortunately, before the state frees up enough vaccine. It's a challenge because they keep adding groups to the vaccine demand. So, and the state came out with a new website for registering for vaccines. I spent a little bit of time on that today. It seems to be much easier, much more user-friendly. It puts you into a queue, and we'll contact you back when you get a spot. We'll see as it goes along. It just launched on Friday, so I'll take any questions. Lynn, I think you had something too on that.
I just wanted to reflect that it's been a year that we've been in this. And I thought it was something we should note, that we're now a full year into this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions for Chief Dearborn from the board? Regards to our status, I see
Mark waved his hand.
Okay. Chief Dearborn, is there an update on the school system in Longmeadow, given all that's in the news about turning to in-person learning?
They're moving towards, I don't know the exact update on the last plans. I have been involved in a couple different conversations on that. But I believe in the next week or so, they're increasing the student population gradually. So I don't have every detail though on that, Mark.
Okay, thanks.
They are moving forward.
Okay.
Tom, I have a question.
Yes, Richard Foster.
Yeah, John, do you know, are we getting any of the variants into this area? And the second question is, are we actively, not us, but is the area being actively tested for the variants?
I was on a meeting last Thursday with some regional folks, and that was part of the discussion. There was no evidence that they had seen, but I don't know. It's kind of confusing how they do the sampling. They do a certain real small percentage sampling for the variants. So I don't know how robust that is, Richard, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
But none have been reported to my knowledge.
Okay. Is that any other comments or questions? All right. Well, thank you, Chief. Keep doing that good work. Hopefully we'll get everyone vaccinated before the next, or at least by May or something like that. That's the plan. Okay, thank you. All right, next we'll go into our announcements. And so Lynn, you want to?
Yes, thank you. Yep. So a couple announcements tonight. The town moderator has created a task force on electronic voting. The purpose is to investigate the feasibility, security costs, and outcomes of electronic voting technology in its process. The report will be available to the public once it's completed. We do need two more members to round out that group. So if anybody is interested, they can submit an email to our townsend@longmeadow.org. And that would be by the end of this week, if possible. There is more information on this on the town website at longmeadow.org. There will be a Longmeadow Community Earth Day cleanup on April 11th at 1 o'clock. Residents can sign up to volunteer on the town website, longmeadow.org. The select board will be accepting nominations for Citizen of the Year. The recipient will be announced at annual town meeting on May 16th. Letters of nomination should be mailed to the Select Board office at 20 William Street or emailed to adminassistant@longmeadow.org by Friday, April 16th. The Recycling Center is now operating on their spring hours, which will open on Wednesday, March 31st. The hours will be Saturdays from 8 to 5, Sundays from 10 to 5, closed on Easter Sunday, and Wednesdays from 10 to 5. And today I received from the town clerk the names of those who have been certified to be on the ballot at the 2021 town election. There are no outstanding nomination papers as of today, and Friday was the last day to pick up papers. So we have on this annual town election now, one has been certified for moderator, Rebecca Townsend. 2 certified for the select board. We have Tom Lakusha and Josh Levine. 3 for the school committee. We have Bronwyn Monahan, Mary Keene, and Zach Veridin. And 1 for the planning board, Walter Gunn. And that is all I have for announcements tonight.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we voted on in last June 2020 was in terms of the Select Board Recognition Awards. And so one was the Citizen of the Year Award, which is a lifetime of distinguished volunteer service to the town of Longmeadow. And that's pretty much the way that award has been for quite a while. And we also talked about a Citizen Commendation Award for outstanding service in the year 2020. So, Lynn, you may get letters for both, for either of those kind of awards, and we would have to take a look at them. So, and maybe we'll get lucky. We'll have 2 people who get recognized at our town meeting. We have an awful lot of people who have put in an awful lot of years and have done some really wonderful things for the town. And so the board expanded those last year to take that into account. The next thing would be our resident comments. And Lynn, I know there's a couple of folks who were interested in doing that.
Yeah, if you could remind them how to notify if they would like to speak.
Yes, so there is, if you're on the web, there's a raise hand indicator in the center of your screen that you can use, or you hit *9. That would, if you're on a telephone, that would be the other way.
So I will just go down the list and move the first person in that's in the list here. So that would be Tom Shea.
Okay, Mr. Shea, start with your name and address, please. When you get a speaker.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is Tom Shea, 81 Greenmeadow Drive. Hold on just one second. Okay, my video was thing. So Tom, do me a favor. Let me start over if you don't mind.
Okay. Start
so,
with Tom.
I know, I got my own here. You're a wrestler. I know you keep time.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom Shea, 81 Greenmeadow Drive. My topic to present is sewerage charges. Water and wastewater treatment are necessities and utilities. Select board members, consulting engineers, and task forces have all said Longmeadow sewer rates are not equitable. The issue is a long, convoluted, and contentious history. As recently as 2017, the town paid for an engineer to review the town's sewer rate setting process. Mr. Madsen resurrected the issue in November. My goal is to get this appropriately settled once and for all. Mass general laws, case law, utility rate regulation, fairness, and common sense require rates to be set equitably, very similar to property taxes. This is not folklore. I urge you to review Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 69B, which governs your duties and responsibilities as a town water commissioners, which I imagine you are familiar with. Always good to take a good look. Tonight's Select Board agenda has item 10E, water and sewer rate presentation and discussion. The attached documents are over 115 pages. As a select board and others on this call are aware, the research and conclusion of those documents has been skewed and unduly influenced by, number one, the outcome, which had some users paying a lot more, which was their acknowledged fair share. Number two, those equitable charges were then determined to be a political problem. Therefore, you should question those documents and their conclusion. I am prepared to make the basis of my remarks public if necessary. Politics have no place in utility rate setting. I suggest you move to appoint a task force, not influenced by politics, and to have a broader input than just two people. The task force was originally proposed by Tom on February 16th. The goal should be equitable rates. Finally, in a related matter, the town should immediately move to study and implement quarterly billing for water and sewer charges, which many surrounding communities have. Longmeadow billing is semi-annual. People are getting bills approaching or over $1,000, which are a burden, and these are forecast to go up 6 to 8% a year. I'll provide you more on this topic later. Thank you for your time and consideration. Tom, I learned. I'm under 3.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your cooperation.
Thank you.
Okay, and Lynn, we have another person?
Yep, I am moving Mary Rogness in.
Okay. So good evening, Mary, and we'd start with your name and address.
Yes, Mary Rogness, 22 Warren Terrace, Longmeadow, of course, and I'm here as representing the trustees of the board of Longmeadow, the Storrs Library in Longmeadow. First of all, I want to thank the board for funding the library once again, or proposing funding for the second year running, which is the state required mandate to allow us to qualify for extra funding that comes to the library from the state. The library is funded in a lot of different ways, primarily by the state, also significantly by the trustees, by the 501c3 corporation that has been running the library since about 1912. But in addition to that, as a reward to the library for meeting the funding level that we are now meeting in Longmeadow, an additional stipend is given by the state for the library's use. It is to be held by the town, so it is held in trust by the town, but only for the discretionary use of the library. And therefore, although last week I think somebody mentioned the possibility of using that funding for that money for basic funding, that cannot be done because it's money that is only under the control of the library. And using it to fund the library would take away from the funding that otherwise is required. It's a complicated thing, but the upshot is this is library money. It's held by the town. That is money that only the library can use.
Okay, Mary, thank you for your comments. And Lynn, do we have any other folks?
Yes, there's a phone number, so I will move them in or allow them to talk, but they'll need to identify themselves.
Okay, so good evening, whoever's called in. If you could start with your name and your address.
And it's *6 to unmute yourself on a phone.
I think you're connected now. Yep, you're connected.
Okay. Andrew Fox, 29 Loren Street. I'm here tonight to urge you to remove Article 37 from the warrant for the upcoming town meeting. Almost identical articles have failed to pass at previous meetings, and town meeting members have made it clear to the administration that they were not interested in watering down a bylaw that protects our town's residential character and upholds our property values. This is important to both current and prospective town residents, particularly when we have the highest residential tax rate in the state. The current proposed article barely passed at the planning board and spurred comments that at the very least it should be rewritten as it is confusing, contradictory, and unclear. What is the purpose and intent of Article 37 anyway? Article 4, Section 1.2A of the town's bylaws has and has always had a definition of commercial vehicle in it. Now with Article 37, you want to add a second and conflicting definition elsewhere in the same document? Article 37 also conflicts with Article 39. What sense does this make? And again, what is the purpose and intent? The town manager was correct at your last meeting. If a definition needs to be added elsewhere in the bylaws, it needs to be consistent with the definition in Article 4, Section 1.2A. Unfortunately, you didn't listen to her. I have listened to your meetings and heard it said that this is to accommodate Mary Kay Cosmetics station wagons. This is confusing on many levels. A station wagon is not a van, truck, or SUV, so does your article cover cars? And if I remember the 1960s correctly, these pink-colored cars always had gold writing on them that said Mary Kay Cosmetics. So they would not be exempt from your new definition that states that a vehicle of any weight that has lettering that represents a commercial enterprise is a commercial vehicle. And Mary Kay is or was certainly a commercial enterprise. Most egregious is your attempt to raise the gross vehicle weight of the definition from the state's mandated 6,000 pounds to 12,000 pounds, which is twice the state's limit. This change would allow a 15-foot box truck to be parked anywhere in town and would not even limit the number of these vehicles. Is that your intent? We have a historic district and a bylaw that mandates the height of one's lawn grass, yet you're wanting an unclear, contradictory, and more loosely defined definition of commercial vehicle in the bylaws? Again, I ask, what is your purpose and intent? I request the following. Remove Article 37 from the warrant. Adopt the state of Massachusetts definition of commercial vehicle for both Article 2 and Article 4, or use the one that already exists in the bylaws for both sections as the town manager suggested. If you truly think that the town needs a different definition, then appoint an open and transparent committee to draft one after you state or admit what your real purpose and intent is here. What everyone seems to miss, and what the state's definition in our own bylaw 1.2A is clear upon, is the word or. Article 4, Section 1.2A of our current bylaw states that a commercial vehicle is any vehicle used in conjunction with a business or which has lettering on it. A commercial vehicle is not limited to any vehicle type. A commercial vehicle may or may not have a commercial license plate on it. A commercial vehicle may or may not have writing on it, but either way, it is still a commercial vehicle if it is used in conjunction with a business. As it is not just about the vehicle itself, it is also about what the vehicle hauls, trails, or carries in its bed or on its sides that defines it, just like the state says. Lastly, this town only reactively enforces bylaws, which is fine, but the ability and the desire has to be available to do so when requested. Your proposed definition is unclear, contradictory, improper, and inadequate. So either copy the state's definition in both sections or duplicate the definition in Article 4 into Article 2. As a resident whose quality of life and property value has suffered for the last 10 years because of it, I think it's high time that you properly fix whatever you need to, if anything, in the bylaws and direct town employees to reactively enforce the rules, as town meeting members also requested almost 3 years ago now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Lynn, do we have anyone else?
I don't see anyone else with their hand raised.
That looks like it's it.
That looks like it's it. Yep.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is an interview for the Audit Committee, Joseph Santinello. And if you could just
Yes, I'm
pull him up.
person in. Yep.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Santinello. Can you hear us?
Yes, good evening.
Okay, well, what we'd like you to do is just you give us your name and address and tell us a little bit about why you want to be on our Audit Committee.
Sure. So my name is Joseph Santinello. I live at 156 Sheffield Avenue in Longmeadow. The reason I would like to be on the Audit Committee is, one, just purchased my home in Longmeadow. So first off, I would like to give back and become a public servant here. Second off, I believe that qualifications-wise, I could support the Audit Committee in their tasks and further their goals and ventures, assisting them with, compliance with our general bylaws as well as mass state laws, as well as any sort of asset management or financial management as well. My current background, I work as a sourcing specialist. However, my colleagues would beg that that role title encompasses many hats, including project manager, financial analyst, and a pseudo auditor.
Okay, so it looks like you spelled that out in your application. Good. Is there any questions from the board for Mr. Santinello? Mark Gold.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Santinello, for applying. It's not really a question so much as it is a advisory, I guess. Noted from your application that your employer is a contractor for this that the town works with for investment firms, and so if you should be appointed to the Audit Committee, my suggestion is that you just take a quick look at the conflict of interest laws in the state. I think it would probably require you to just submit a letter documenting that you do work for somebody who the town works with, and that should clear it up. I don't see it as a real issue, but I did want to let you go through this appointment without recognizing that it may be something that probably should be addressed. But again, my thanks for your application. I don't see an issue, but I think you should be submitting a disclosure.
Thank you, and I appreciate the transparency. I would definitely submit that disclosure to the state.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Yeah, Joseph, have you ever been on a community board, anything like this before?
I have not.
Okay, so we're all doing things by Zoom right now, so it doesn't seem like that's going to be a problem for you. You're with us here this evening, and the Audit Committee. Hopefully, have you ever attended one of their meetings yet?
I have not, but I've been looking at their past minutes and agendas.
Okay, great. So good. I'm glad you have an idea of what they do, and the town really counts on the Audit Committee because the board we're ultimately held responsible for the way spending goes and what's going on, and so we need our own internal audit group to help us make sure that everything's on board. So we appreciate your volunteering, and we will let you know at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. All right, the next thing would be the select board comments. Do we have any select boards? Mark Gold, I see your hand up. Go ahead. You're still muted. There we go.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to the comments that were presented regarding the sewer billing system. The assertion that the data was skewed and unduly influenced, which are the words that were used, is incorrect. The work that Mr. Foster and I did was to gather and organize water usage data. There was no data manipulation, skewing, or influencing of any kind. Our goal was to gather and organize data on inferring summer sewer usage and present that data to the select board to provide the factual data necessary for us to make an intelligent, fact-based, and informed decision in our pursuit of a more equitable sewer rate structure. I believe we achieved that goal. If one looks at the report that we issued, there is no presumed one right answer. In fact, there's no recommendation whatsoever. What we have presented is the data organized in a manner that allows the select board to understand the impact of several different, equally justifiable methods of inferring summer sewer use from winter water data. We have identified issues, one might call them unintended consequences, that would arise from many of the proposed systems of sewer billing, and we have sorted through several alternatives. We actually looked at a total of 13 different scenarios of the three major options. And we pointed out how that, although on the surface some may seem to be insignificantly different from one another, they raise concerns about which the select board should be aware. Again, this has been done with the intent of providing the select board members with data they can use to understand the issue and make an informed decision. I welcome the input of our residents who express their opinions and concerns. And as both Mr. Foster and I noted at earlier meetings, we welcome the input that would be gathered through the public forum that we hope the select board will schedule in the coming days. However, I also want to make sure that what the select board hears in those public hearings are factually correct and appropriate. For example, what we heard tonight from the person we heard from tonight had earlier written the select board several letters in opposition to Mr. Foster's early 3-month winter averaging suggestion, stating that his preferred method of inferring summer sewer use was through using the average of the 7 winter months of October through April. Well, the facts just don't support the select board adopting that approach. What the data show is that there is a lingering irrigation usage in October, skewing that data, as well as early irrigation in late April, which also skews that data. The data show that neither of those months should be included in our consideration. The data show that 5 months winter water usage is far better infers summer irrigation than 7 months. We've also heard numerous emails and recommendations from other individuals stating the select board should adopt the summer sewer fee structure of neighboring cities such as Springfield and West Springfield, which have authorized secondary irrigation meters. The data shows the significant issues that arise through the use of secondary meters. And I will argue, when the select board takes up this issue, that Longmeadow should not adopt the sewer fee basis used by these towns. For many of the same reasons, we have not adopted the split tax rate systems of those towns, because the demographics, the numbers, the data are different. We have water measurement systems and monthly use data available to us that was not available to these cities when they adopted their secondary water meters programs. It behooves us to use that 21st century technology. Point of fact, for Longmeadow, the data shows that the residents with the top 5% of water use, and that's 270 homes, if they were to install a secondary irrigation meter, over 1/3 of them would have their sewer rates increase by 23%. The data shows that if the top 10% of users installed a secondary water meter, over 30% of them would have an increase in their bill of 23%. Talk about a win-win, that would be a lose-lose. Homeowners would invest about $850 in a second meter and find their sewer fees go up instead of down. That's what I meant by saying our data organization in summary can and must be used by the select board to make an informed decision and avoid unintended consequences. I recognize this issue is both complex yet engaging to some of our residents. But as I also note, data must be the basis for the decisions that we make, not the emotions of the most vocal of our residents or findings on the internet about what other towns are doing. I look forward to the select board sponsored public forum on these issues, where the select board can review the data, listen to our residents' concern, and gather the information needed to make informed, fact-based decisions to lead the community's pursuit of a more equitable sewer billing system. Thank you.
All right. Any other select board comments this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the town manager's report.
Thank you. So as you maybe have seen from the beginning of this meeting, we have an interim administrative assistant filling the role while we conduct interviews for a permanent replacement. Mike Barbieri has joined us. He is the school age before and after school coordinator for the Parks and Recreation Department and was on furlough since last spring. Mike was recently brought back to assist with the vaccination clinics, and he was a huge help there. I saw his skills, initiative, and ability to learn quickly at the clinic, and it became apparent that when it became apparent that we would not be running a clinic anymore, I asked Mike if he was interested in helping out. So that's who we have here tonight filling the role. To reach Mike or to send an email that would have normally gone to Debbie, everyone can feel free to use adminassistant@longmeadow.org. Just a couple weeks ago, the IT department secured another round of cybersecurity grant funding. This is going to continue with some cybersecurity training that we had started last year. This cybersecurity awareness grant program is funded through the state's Executive Office of Technology Services and Security, and it makes end user cybersecurity training and assessments and simulation tools available. The fire department recently had 2 firefighter paramedics graduate from the academy. We have David Kidda and Abigail Candy. Both of them did really well in their training and represented LFD very well. And an RFP for the farmland lease in the Meadows area has gone out. This is for leasing approximately 166 acres of town-owned farmland off of West Road, Anthony Road, and Bernie Road. The lease requires the farmer to facilitate the tilling of the town-wide fall leaf collection and compost them into the field as part of that recycling program. This is a 1-year contract, and we have an ad alternate in there to give us a quote on mowing of the capped landfill, which will be required to be maintained now moving forward as part of that permit. RFP submissions are due March 19th. And that's all I have for a formal report tonight.
Okay. There was some stuff about DPW and PVC and community. Are those the next sheet?
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a backside. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Thought I was just one page here. Yes, sorry. DPW had just contracted with DPC Engineering to perform a water system risk and resiliency assessment. This is required as part of the EPA. It's a cost not to exceed almost $12,000, not quite. And they're going to evaluate 10 key elements and give us a report on that. And I can report back to you at an upcoming meeting when that report is done. And this is an EPA requirement for small community water systems risk and resilience assessment checklist and form that we're required to do. And Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and the Health Department COVID-19 emergency funding. So now that we are no longer considered exploring a shared health district with East Longmeadow, all of our DPH funding for COVID-19 will come through Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. This new grant round or new funding round from January 1st to June 30th is going to give us $8,384. The previous 6-month period when we were considered to be a shared service was funded at $25,000. So we definitely were making a push for communities to share their services, and they were doing that by giving you increased funding. And the Community Compact Best Practice Program, we were awarded a grant to fund an organizational study of the Department of Public Works and to provide a supervisory leadership development training program. The total grant award for both of these 2 projects is $35,500 and should yield years of benefit to the town, both in the organizational study and by the training of our supervisors and department heads. That is now the end. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I know that the leadership grant is something that is going to be helpful as we make this transition as a new building. I know in the past we've discussed having some training for folks on setting up a system that would improve safety for all the workers in the field and in the building. And but I know that we, in our discussions, that you think that would be better done after we hire a new director for DPW. And so, you know, I think that's a good phase in. Is there any questions from members of the board? I see Mark Gold. Yeah.
Lynn, I just got interesting, like a third-hand email today from somebody who was concerned about the lease for the farmland lease, that they said they were just finding out about it and they wanted to know about potentially extending the deadline. I don't know if you or Chad or if anybody have heard about that, but and I'm not in a position to say, you know, what's going on. I know I read about it in the reminder several weeks ago, but I was just wondering if you and Chad had heard about it, and if you hadn't, maybe you could just ask some of the potentially key players about that.
If you could pass me that communication, we can definitely get in touch with that individual and find out a little bit more about what they're considering or concerns are for meeting that Friday deadline.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, next thing I'd like to do is, in our new business, we have approval of the appointed public health director. And I'd like to move that to now after the town manager's report, so she could introduce Mr. Mccool and talk a little bit about why she'd like to have us appoint him.
Thank you. And let me just make a change here to the attendee list and invite Finn in. And while that's happening, thank you for taking this out of order. So tonight on your agenda, I am presenting Finn Mccool for appointment to the position of health director. This is filling the vacancy created by the retirement of Beverly Hirshhorn in December. Mr. Mccool most recently served as health inspector for the Quabbin Health District. In this role, he performed health inspections and enforcement activities for the towns of Ware, Belchertown, and Pelham. And prior to that role, he served as health inspector intern for the town of Munson Board of Health. Mr. Mccool holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Science from Worcester State University, an Associate's degree in Integrated Studies from Endicott College, and completed the Emergency Management Technician Training Program at Greenfield Community College. Mr. Mccool has a demonstrated knowledge and understanding of the state sanitary code and environmental code. His ability to provide health inspector services for 3 towns will serve the town of Longmeadow well. And I am pleased to submit his appointment as our next public health director to the select board for confirmation in accordance with the Longmeadow Charter, Article 5-2B. And I do have Finn Mccool here tonight, so you can put a face to the name and meet him yourself and ask some questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Finn. Please tell us a little bit about why you're interested in working for our town.
Well, I think Lynn, first off, Lynn, thank you for the introduction. So I grew up in Wilbraham. Longmeadow has always been an amazing town, and I have friends and family that live out there, and I'm just excited to jump in and perform the role that we need.
Okay. So it looks like from your resume that you've had a lot of, you were health inspector in your job just prior to this.
Yep.
So you've done a lot of inspecting, which is probably something we care quite a bit about, because, people eat in restaurants quite a bit in this town, maybe more than
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that'll be one of my first things I'd like to do is just, get into the town, meet the community, and meet, all the people that are running these restaurants. And during this pandemic, I think it's really important that these restaurants are following the new COVID guidelines. I know they get updated a lot, so it's really important that they're following the guidelines. And I'm just excited to get out there and make sure that everything's going well.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from other members of the board? Mark Gold, and then Steve. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mccool. Congratulations on your tentative appointment here.
Thanks.
questions. The first one is a statement that you, from all, experience, you got big shoes to fill. So
Yes, of course, I know.
the second thing is though, and this sounds like it's in jest, but it really is a serious question. Can you be tough enough? I mean, sometimes you got to play the bad guy in our town, in any town. And I guess my question is, do you feel that you can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I know I have big shoes to fill, and I know Beverly, and I know how she runs things, and I know it's really important to be able to, like you said, be that bad guy sometimes. But a lot of this job it's a lot about educating people on why stuff isn't correct, and then of course, yes, you have to again, be that bad guy. But absolutely, I'm excited and ready to step up to the plate.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve Morantz.
Yeah, two things. One is where do you live, Finn?
I'm currently living in Webster, Mass.
So is commuting any kind of issue?
No, well, it's definitely a commute for sure. Like Lynn said, I've been working for the Quabbin Health District for the past few years. It's not much of a further commute. It's a few extra minutes. It's no problem to me.
Okay. Second question, let's follow up to what Mark Gold asked you. In terms of maybe being director of the Board of Health is like herding cats, I'm not sure. But when we were looking for direction for open town meeting, closed town meeting, what to do about town meeting, as the state was basically giving us no direction about what to do. The State Department of Public Health said, go, do what you're going to do, guys. In terms of that kind, that's the kind of leadership I think that would be extremely, that's what we're looking for in this town. And,
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And, in terms of how you expect to, as I said, maybe it's herding cats, maybe, I have no idea. Maybe it's molding Jell-O, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it could be a tough task.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a tough task, and I'm lucky enough to have worked for a great district, and I've learned a lot from my current director, and I'll definitely take what I've learned from her and bring it to Longmeadow.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, and are you involved with any, like health inspectors associations or anything to do with, with that at this point? Have you gone to any like state meetings for inspectors or?
As far as like state meetings, I am part of the MHOA in Mass, so I do listen on meetings from the state and from other districts and towns. So yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. That'll be another way to sort of guide you through the challenges
Yes.
we're going to be facing. Because a lot
Absolutely.
of the offices are brand new. No health care in the past has ever had to deal with anything like COVID. So
Right.
Tom, I did have a question. I was muted before.
Oh, okay. Yes, Richard Foster.
Yeah, I was talking to a dead mic again. I was interested in the health inspector intern position that you held in Munson. Was that an actual intern position where it was a certification program, or was it? Tell me about it. What was it?
Yeah, so it wasn't like a certified program, but I interned with the department, and this is basically how I started to learn about the whole field and understand what this position entails.
Okay, good. Because
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Richard. I just thought this was important. I think if I remember right, Finn, that was right around the time of the tornado. You had been involved with some emergency management stuff there after some disaster.
Yeah, after the tornado came through, I was lucky enough to be involved with some of the emergency management there, helping out with setting up shelters and bringing in food for the people that were in need at the time. So I did get some good experience there for sure, and I'm very fortunate.
I don't have anything more, Tom.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And yeah, that kind of, again, tornadoes here, you know, again, it was a kind of a novel experience. So,
Yeah.
You know, it was fate that you got to see some of that. And that was a
Right.
town. It was really
Right.
very difficult. You know, they had a recovery, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so in terms of, like, in Munson, did they talk much about the mental health reaction people had to seeing so much of their town just basically dismantled by a tornado?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely affected a lot of people, and it was interesting to see all the people that are helping. You know, they would come in and be working in this environment where everything is, you know, destroyed, and then you drive a mile down the road and everything's back to normal, and you go back the next day to help out, and you're in this terrible place where everything's destroyed. So it definitely affected a lot of people, even the people that were helping too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Yes, because when we look at, you know, public health, a lot of times we overlook the mental health challenges that happen.
Of course.
State of emergency and so forth, and COVID has created a lot of those also because people have been indoors, and so there may be some things to attend to as a health director in terms of
absolutely
getting people back into community settings because after they've been in, you know, sort of locked in their houses for so long.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So, Mark Gold, the other question?
I'd like to place a motion on the floor that we endorse the nomination of Finn Mccool as the next director of the health department in the town of Longmeadow.
Okay, we second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Mike Barbieri to do a roll call vote.
All right, roll call vote. Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay, well, congratulations, Mr. Mccool. And I guess, you know, we'll see you when we have a town meeting. We usually would see you there, but we are going to have one actually. That's right. You'll be able to be there. So
awesome.
We'll see you in person then. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have a good evening.
Okay. All right. So now we have moved all the way down to old business. We need to approve the meeting minutes of the first.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of the March 1st, 2021 regular select board meeting.
Okay. Second, anyone?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Barbieri will do a roll call vote.
Okay. Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Okay, great. And so next we go to an appointment to the audit committee and the historical commission is what we're going to appoint this evening. And we have Thomas King, who would be looking to be on I guess there's a 3-year term expiring 6/30/33 or 23. I'm sorry, not that long. Can we get a motion for him to be on the historical commission?
I'll move that we appoint Thomas King to fill a vacancy on the historical commission to a 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2023.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Mike Barbieri?
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And Richard?
Yes.
Right. Our next order of business is the capital plan vote. And we got information on the capital planning committee's recommendations and the town manager's recommendations and the capital plan warrant article that shows the differences. And so I don't know who wants to speak first. If we should hear from you, Lynn, about the differences, or if anyone on the board would like to make comments, or so it's Article 13, and the total amount has stayed the same of $1,869,639, and so if folks have any questions at this point.
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to propose some amendments.
Okay. Well, why don't we discuss them first, and then you can make a proposal after that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead and discuss.
Oh, okay. All right. So, you don't want to the amendments? You don't want to discuss the amendments that you're going to want us to look at?
Oh yeah, I thought I didn't think that's what you're after. Hold on, I'm trying to bring up.
No, that's what I meant. I wasn't ready to entertain a motion. I guess the proposal, maybe we're just the terms, but but please go ahead. Tell us what you're proposing to make changes on.
Okay. What I would like to do is, I'm looking at the thing, take the existing pavement program, take it back to the $500,000 that was recommended by Lynn. That frees up $225,000. I'd like to take $14,416 of that and apply it to the area of the oil tank removals at the schools. It looks like that was shy of $14,416. I'd like to take and place $175,000 of that to the sidewalks to bring that program back to $400,000. And I'd like to take the remaining $35,384 and apply it to the fire truck a replacement reserve fund.
Okay, and just to be clear, you said you want to take $175,000 and then use part of that to boost up the or not to, well, I guess I'm not sure where that 175,000. Where's that from?
Okay, I'll go through it again.
Yeah.
I'd like to take $225,000 away from the asphalt program.
Okay.
That $225,000, I'd like to take $14,416 and apply it to the oil tank removal program because it looks like we're deficient that much money. Lynn had requested more money on that.
Okay.
Then I'd like to follow me so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I'd like to take $175,000 and apply it to the sidewalk program to bring that back up to the $400,000, which is more normal.
Okay.
And then I noticed that we weren't putting any reserves this time in the fire truck replacement fund. And I think I've got $35,384 left that I'd like to apply to that reserve for our fire truck fund. And that should liquidate the entire $225,000 that was originally pulled from the asphalt.
Okay. So, and the you refer as asphalt is listed on here as pavement preservation.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's presently, it looks like Capital had it at 725 and Lynn recommended 500. And I did send out via email as the meeting started some public information. I gave every board member in their email system an analysis of the money from 2021 back to 2011 that we've allocated to pavement and sidewalks. It's just for your information. You'll be able to see the way it moves back and forth. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess, well, I saw Steve Moranson, and I know at some point Lynn will want to comment. Yes.
Well, my question would be to Lynn about, because essentially what Richard's proposing is pretty much Lynn's budget except for the fire truck replacement reserve. And since that was zero in her budget, I wonder if she could give us some explanation for that.
Just to be clear, I think it was 0 in FY 21. She had recommended 75,000 for the FY 22, which is the third line down.
Okay, so so this is her budget. Although Lynn's stuff is on the right side, and then all of a sudden this is not there. So just
well, again, it says for FY 21. Lynn had 75 in FY 22.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay, I misread that then, Tom. I thought that it was going, I was under the impression it was going to be 0 funded this year.
Right.
So
Okay.
we can withdraw, my recommendation is to draw that $35,000 back and it can be placed wherever the highest need is. I would, lead to the town manager to identify that for us.
Well, just so everyone is clear, in FY 21, we made 0 contribution. So we missed the year. And we're probably, I don't want to say we're behind the year, but we did not put any money in that fund in FY 21 due to the pandemic and the town meeting movements and things to that nature. So,
it may make sense, Paul, is what you're saying, to put $35,584 more in.
Exactly. To increase to 75 plus the 35.
Rich, stick with your guns, Richard.
Okay, I stand corrected. Based on further information, yeah, I'll put the 35 back in there.
So that would make it $115,000.
Yeah, I have done the math on it, Tom, but it sounds pretty close.
Yeah.
120.
And Mark Gold, your comments.
Yeah, just a quick question. Lynn, do you recall why the capital planning committee recommended only $30,000 for the oil tank removal at the elementary schools, other than the full $44,416 that was estimated?
If I remember correctly, I think DPW may have provided them more information on the status of the pumping out of any excess oil that's in there. If I'm remembering this correctly, we're going back a few months now.
Yeah, but that's what I seem to recall too. I mean, the issue is they may not need it all. So if we appropriate the money and it's not needed, it goes back anyway to capital stabilization funds. But
it's harder to find it later.
Enough, it doesn't get done.
Yep.
Okay, good. So
there is a note on the capital planning submission for that. It says the head of the DPW suggested this reduction rather than not fund radios. Just as an FYI, that was a note from the capital planning committee on that particular item.
Okay. Well, Mark, before you go, Lynn, and as far as this proposal for rearrangements that Richard Foster is discussing, is there anything on that you would take issue with, or? No. Sounds good. All right. Well, that's good today. And now, Mark, do you have something?
I wanted to look at the bottom part of that, which is capital purchases and the distribution between the raise and appropriate and our 2 stabilization funds, our water and sewer stabilization funds. I remain concerned that some of the funding, particularly there's a front end loader, it seems to be pretty heavily weighted toward funding it from the sewer and water retained earnings relative to the raise and appropriate, given the fact that it's not generally used as much for water and sewer projects as it is for general DPW services. And the other one is the 2-ton dump truck with spreader, which is distributed a third instead of our historical 50, 25, 25. And I'm concerned about both of those. Unfortunately, I don't know how we can come up with more money since we don't have the funds, although, I did want to just mention that I think that those are inordinately burdening the water retained earnings and sewer retained earnings funds for both of those major purchases.
Mark, you bring that to my attention. On that 2-ton dump truck, it should be 50, 25, 25. It's a $100,000 vehicle. So the numbers that are before you in that warrant, should be 50 from the capital stabilization fund, 25 from water, and 25 from sewer. That's an error on my part. And the front end loader, and again, that ratio is, 50% general fund or capital stabilization fund, 25, 25. And it's the same ratio when you get into the front end loader. It's 50% general fund, 25, 25 water sewer.
So the numbers they're all, because mine has a problem lining up, Paul, but it says something like 46,250, 46,250, and 37,991, and I didn't get that.
Right. So there's a raise and appropriate of 54,509.
Yeah.
If you add that to the 37,991, which in essence would be considered the general fund, that should be 92.5, which is 50% of the full amount.
Oh, okay. I guess I just, it's not reading that way, but okay, I'm good with it then, Paul.
Right. But on the 2
ton, or is it just the way we're writing it?
Yeah, on the 2 ton spreader, it should be 50, 25, 25, and not 50, 50, 50.
Well, I just had 54.5 with 46,250 and 40. That's fine. As long as it's 50, 25, 25, that keeps our historical levels. I'm good. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it, Paul.
Right, like I said, but on the last one, it should be 50,
25,
25, right. That's a correction needed.
Yeah, and it probably should have had the price of the 2 ton dump truck is $100,000, and it doesn't have that. So we can make those adjustments. That'd be good. And any other questions or comments on this presentation? So I guess maybe you could, I don't know if you actually need to repeat that changes, Richard, but could we just, maybe we should just have a motion to accept the changes that Richard has made. Richard, you want to just say that? Well,
I think for Mike, we ought to repeat them, Tom. I've got them written. If you want me to do that?
Go ahead.
Richard, I'm not going to make the motion. You can, but the motion would be that we approve a capital appropriation article that would authorize $25,000 for project development, $10,000 for project reserve, $110,584 for fire truck.
110,384.
What, Paul?
I have 110,384.
But it needs to be 584 for it to balance what. Remember, there was 5 out, right, Paul? If we took 225 out and we put 14,416.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
So 584, 110, 584.
That's what I get when I add 35, 584 to 75, right? 110, 584 for the fire truck. Okay, $50,000 for the fire truck kitchen upgrade, $124,639 for the radio replacement, $60,000 for townwide S2 system access, $175,000 for core technology infrastructure, $25,000 for data backup and recovery system, $165,000 for center school boiler replacement, $44,416 for the oil tank removal at Blueberry Hill and Wolf Swamp schools, $75,000 for the high school glass showcase replacement, $80,000 for the purchase of 2 4x4 pickup trucks with plows, $80,000, $500,000 for pavement preservation, $400,000 for sidewalks reconstruction, $25,000 for guardrail, for a subtotal of $1,869,639, and from the multi-funds to recommend the appropriation of funds to purchase a front-end loader with funds from the Treasury of $92,500 and funds from the water retained earnings, $46,250, and from the sewer retained earnings, $46,250. And for the purchase of a 2-ton dump truck with plow, from the Raise and Appropriate General Fund, $50,000. From the Water Stabilization Fund retained earnings, $25,000, and from the Sewer Fund Stabilization Fund, $25,000. Paul, does that jive with your?
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
Okay. Mike Barbier, will you take a roll call vote? Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Richard.
Yes.
Okay, good work. We'll move on to the budget vote. We've looked at this budget several times now, and I know that tonight we just have to get some final numbers. So I don't know if Lynn wants to discuss that, or if Paul wants to just identify what some of the differences are between this budget and what we've seen last week.
I don't think that there's any real differences since last week's budget forum at all. You had an opportunity to hear from departments and to take part in a conversation with the finance committee. At this point, I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. Anything from you, Paul?
No, the numbers remain the same from what was originally presented, as far as we know.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Marco?
Yeah, the question I have is that the budget we're looking at has a different number for the school department from the budget that was presented or submitted by the school department, I believe. And so the question is, how is that going to be handled? Can we in fact put two sets of numbers on a town warrant? Or do we just take our number and let the school and say that's the proposal before the town and have this represent that it's different from the school committee's budget?
Okay. Mark, if you look at Article 11, you will notice that there are two columns there. One with the
confusing as all get out, Paul.
One with the school board budget as they recommended, and one with the select board's budget as Lynn's currently recommending it. By law, we have to print the school board's budget, and we have to, within the main motion on the article, we have to read the school board's budget amount into the main article. It'll have to be amended thereafter by a motion to amend to get it to the select board's number. So that's why I wanted to present both numbers so that town meeting would be able to see the $90,000 difference. It's the school line that is the only line that is different between those two columns. But the school board's budget does have to be shown, and it does have to be presented in the main motion.
Is there, and this is a question I don't know the answer to, but is there a way to make that more clear to people what we're doing and how we're doing it, such as to, instead of showing both full budgets, to show a budget that says that it's the intent of the select board to amend the motion in order to have a balanced budget?
We could, I guess. Well, again, I don't want to put an amendment in there because the amendment may not pass, and it's something we've never done before.
The issue is, what if we propose this motion and the amendment doesn't pass? Now we've got a budget that's got $90,000 in additional expenditures that we don't have revenue for.
Well, again, the law states that we have to utilize their budget in the main motion. It's going to have to be explained when somebody comes up to read an amendment of why the amendment is important for the overall budget and meeting the goals, the select board's goals.
It falls to the chair who reads the budget, Tom.
Okay, and then, so, because we have to have a balanced budget.
Right.
So we have to read that amendment. And we distribute these warrant articles, so we usually give one with most of the math figures on to you, Mark.
Well, I understand that. I was just thinking that, and maybe we'll cover this when we get to the warrant, but I think somehow it ought to say, you know, exactly what you said, that the law requires us to put down the school budget, but board budget, which we've done, but this, as proposed, this budget is out of.
I think, Mark, what I could do is in the explanation, write all that detail.
Yeah.
I'll tell you though, even if the school board's budget does pass, you are still going to have a balanced budget. You are going to have less excess capacity.
Say that again. I mean, this budget is based on, well, yeah, less tax levy.
Right. But you will have enough money to fund it. You will not meet your select board's goal of that 1.75, which had $385,000 of excess capacity. It will be $290,000 worth of excess capacity.
Right.
So you would still have enough money to fund it. Just the goals of the select board do not necessarily get met.
Okay. I guess the second question is what's going to be the position of the school committee when they see this? Have we? My understanding is, yeah, my understanding speaking with Tom Mazza is that they will not. And again, this is only his feeling about that they're not going to fight it. Okay.
And again, this has already gone through quite a few hoops. If there were complaints about it, you'd think we would have heard something by now. And the finance committee, again, is also very glad that we're not increasing the amount that we're taxing people above the 1.75 or whatever. So, but that's a good point, Mark. And so that motion will be made. We'll present the alternatives. I guess things could go awry, but I guess it's been so long since we've done something like this that it seems like new territory. Any other questions or comments on the budget? Okay, so it looks good. As I say, we've had several, 3 meetings in the last 2 weeks, and now we're here for the final vote. So I'm looking for a motion to accept the budget.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All right, Richard. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry? Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
All right. Now we'll move to the water and sewer rate. We have presentations and discussion on the agenda. We received, again, a wealth of information about the sewer rates, the sewer rate studies, and a sewer rate presentation. And so, Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
I actually didn't think the budget and everything would go this quickly, and didn't really think that we would be doing this tonight. But I am prepared to give a brief presentation if that's where you want to go with this tonight for just the select board, to let them show with what we've been doing. Alternatively, we could defer this to a special meeting, which is what really I think this deserves, so that people understand what's going on. It's up to the rest of the select board members. But I'm prepared to go through this in a rather brief process if that's what people want. So I'll defer to what other people want to do.
Okay. Any other comments on that idea from the select?
Yeah, I vote to defer.
Okay. And Steve Morantz?
Yes, I vote to defer, but my comment would be, first, I would thank Richard and Mark for the obvious incredible amount of work they did to create this database. But I would go back to what I believe was Richard's suggestion late last fall or early in the winter, was the task force, I think in terms of what folks want to do with the select board, I think we want as much input as possible, and I'm not just sure a public hearing is going to give us that. The data that I got, we have obviously this has been studied to a lot, but from what I can see, old task force, we've actually instituted some of the recommendations from old task force. I believe the reason we have enterprise funds is because of the task force done, 13, 14 years ago. Only took half of that recommendation. There was another recommendation for having a tiered system. There was a study from 2008, which actually had, I thought was a very interesting proposal, having a set, a flat fee, and then water and sewer rates. I think all that stuff, which were, in terms of what Mark and Richard did, those were not, it was basically second meter, or some sort of form of winter averaging, which are all fine alternatives, but there seem to be more, and I'm not sure, I go back to, I think that we need further input, because I think we do need to make a decision. And the only decision I would have us make sooner as opposed to later, every one of these recommendations said we should bill quarterly. That one seems to be the complete no-brainer about what we really ought to do before we do anything else. But other than that, I think we should defer, but I think we should go back to the original. I think community input, more than just a public forum about this. And I do not diminish. I applaud the work that Richard and Mark have done, but I think it's really, that needs to be put together with a 2017 study and all this other work that's been done beforehand. So I think that when we decide as water and sewer folks to make a decision that we have as much possible input from as many people as possible, and we're not going to solve, everyone's not going to be happy with whatever we come up with, but at least we'll have the most input possible. And those are my thoughts on the situation.
Okay, and I know we did get some emails, and towns around us are moving forward to look at this issue. And I know I talked with a friend who lives in a town where they don't even have meters. They just give everyone a flat bill. If you have a meter, you could put one in and pay for it. But so it is something that I think we should discuss. I had mentioned a task force, and I guess that didn't go too far. But again, we've been letting Richard and Mark Gold, carry the weight of this for quite a long time. So my proposal is that we do have a meeting, and I believe it would be good if we did on Monday the 22nd at 7 p.m., where we would have an open forum on this issue, and we could have a public comment section, because there are folks who have things to say, and we don't want them to feel like they haven't had their due, because it's such a big, it's going to affect every resident of the town. It's not like it's just going to affect a handful of people. Everyone's going to be affected. And then generally after the end of a public forum like that, we would have some clearer idea about if we should make a motion to make a change, or if we should set up a task force. If it still seems unclear what direction, then a task force would probably be warranted. And I think we'd be in a better position to do that after a meeting on the 22nd. I don't know what other people are thinking. Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, just a comment. I probably am so deep in the weeds here, I can't see over the top of them. But we have data available to us now that has not been available prior to just a couple of years ago. And so a lot of the proposals that were done before, a lot of the proposals we see in other towns is based on people who could only, and even in Longmeadow, if you go back, we read meters twice a year because we had full-time meter readers, and they read each section of town 1/6 of the town every month. And then at the end of 6 months, they went back and read that section of town. And that was the basis behind which, water rates were set up. And so, my comments earlier were the data, because we've got a lot of comments based on systems or understandings, but very, very few on data. And I think it's worth noting that when Richard Foster was given the data, what he was given was, 63,000 or something like that meter readings. A meter reading for every month for 5,441 towns. We had to take those meter readings and use those to calculate the actual water use for each month. And those dates aren't always the first of the month. Sometimes the first fell on a Sunday, and so some of them, they're not always equal periods of time. And so, the data is just unbelievable, and it tells us a lot of other things. I think that it may be worth for everybody here for me to quickly run through a very, very, very abridged version of what that report shows. I'm willing to do that if that's what people want to do. So we understand that, what Richard and I did was utilize information that had not previously been utilized in trying to identify an equitable sewer system or sewer cost inference system, because that's really what we're doing in any of these, is inferring our sewer use in the summer from our actual water use other times of the year. So Tom, if you've still got 10 minutes, I'll run through this thing. And maybe after that, Steve, if you still think that we still have that same need to pull in all that old information, we'll listen again.
We're on the agenda. I think I'd even give you 15 minutes, Mark.
Okay.
Please, go ahead.
So Lynn, if you want to make me a presenter.
So we can share the screen. Will you be using the PowerPoint that you had given?
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint.
Great, thank you.
Let me find my PowerPoint presentation. Hold on.
It's linked on the agenda if that's easier for you.
Excuse me, Lynn?
It's linked on the agenda if it's easier for you to find it that way.
No, that's not the presentation I want. That one's much too long.
Oh, good. I was wondering how you didn't get through that in 10
minutes. No, that one's too long. What I'm trying to do is...
that was the 4-day version, Tom.
Yeah, that's the 4-day version.
Yeah, so maybe part of a week, half of a week.
Here it is. Okay.
Great.
Here we go. All right, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Okay, so, this was our objective, and I'm not going to read all these because I assume people can read, but, it was to come up with the alternative methods. And we just, as a basis used, we had the actual 2020 fiscal year data. That's July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. A lot of residential users, a lot of different data points. This is a great slide because it shows what our units are. We talk in terms of water units. One water unit is 100 cubic feet of water, it's 748 gallons. But when we talk about how people use it for irrigation, did this quick calculation of what a 10,000 square foot lawn would use 50 units if you water it 3 times a week with a half an inch of water for a month. So that's kind of a benchmark, and I thought that was interesting to do. We looked at a couple of different things. We looked at our current billing system. We looked at our secondary water meters, which is the proposal that's now up there for a petition, for citizens petition, and we looked at Mr. Foster's winter averaging proposal. That was the system that Mr. Foster recommended back back many, many weeks ago. And finally, we came up with, we called the secondary meters option 1, and the winter averaging, we came up with option 3 because during this process, I looked at something called winter maximum, which is option 2. It's kind of in between the two other options, the option 1 and the option 3. It's winter maximum. So for each system, and I'm not going to read through these, we talked about the benefits and advantages. You can talk about the pluses and minuses, whatever you want to. But, we have the current system's benefits. We have some of the current system's drawbacks and disadvantages. Clearly, the biggest one is irrigation users appear to be subsidizing the sewer revenue. But, people can go through this and look at it. These are also in the larger presentation. Just want to make a comment because we talk about irrigation water. We're defining irrigation water as water used that's not used for potable water. So it's whether it's through watering your lawns, washing your cars. Some people have a lot of usage from filling swimming pools, that kind of stuff. And this slide just shows the current system of total water usage. And you can see the green curve is what people use for water, but the red curve is what people are charged for sewer. And what you can see is that we've got a commercial sewer volume, a residential sewer volume, our sewer rate, and sewer revenue of $1.9 million. And it's that sewer revenue that we try to equalize, and that this program equalizes in all cases the sewer revenue. Okay, so we looked at a couple of different things and we called them different scenarios. And I'm just going to run through these, and we looked at them as we were going. I'll mention that the biggest problem we have with secondary meters is once they're authorized, the town has no idea who's going to put it in. People can put it in if they want to, if they don't want to, and so we looked at, well, maybe 5% of the people put it in. We looked at 10%, maybe 25%. We looked at, well, if you save $200 or more, but then we looked at what happens if everybody puts one in who could get a 5-year or less payback. And that's the scenario, we're calling it 1E, that we really looked at in the secondary meter option, okay? So again, for secondary meters, we looked at the benefits, and you can see it's supposedly measuring exactly what you're using for your home and not for what it's used for irrigation. And we'll look at the disadvantages, which $850 per person, that it doesn't attract very many residents, and it only benefits those residents who pay to put in a second meter. Anybody left behind will pay more. And the reason is because that we have to raise that $1.9 million we showed in advance. And so if you recall, the way we calculate our sewer bill, our sewer rate here is Paul Pasturzak says it's going to cost $1.9 million to run the sewer department. We think we're going to bill out 721,000 units, and we divide one by the other and we say, okay, here's the sewer rate. If we think we're going to bill out fewer units, the sewer rate goes up. The one thing we have is with secondary meters, we keep the 220 unit cap in place. And so homes that didn't install a secondary meter would pay more. Okay? More of the drawbacks to the secondary meter. If you don't install a second meter, your rates go up, prices go up 23.3%. This is what I alluded to earlier. Even after installing a second meter, the largest users will still be at the 220 unit cap, and they'll be paying a higher sewer bill. So that we went through and looked at all the advantages and disadvantages of that. And when we were done, what we said is if everybody who can put in a sewer meter, a secondary meter who gets a 5-year or less payback based on an $850 cost, our volume would go from 671,000 units, which requires that current rate. The volume would drop to 530,000 units, which would now require us to have a rate of $3.28 to give us the equal revenue that the town needs. That's a 23.3% increase in the fee, okay? So the maximum people pay, which is currently $585.20, would increase to $721.60. And many people will now pay that increased amount. Okay? What we found is if you put that in and people actually put in the meter, 4,200 of our residents will pay more And the 1,190 people who put in a meter will all pay less. So it only benefits those who put in a secondary meter. Now we're looked at winter averaging, which is the proposal that Richard Foster had. And again, we looked at a couple of scenarios. We started with the 3-month winter average. We went to a 5-month winter average, and one of our residents suggested a 7-month winter average, and we chose the 5-month winter average. Okay. Advantages, pretty easy to implement, more representative of the actual summer sewer volume than the arbitrary cap. Okay. Some disadvantages, it requires some operational changes. I don't think that's a big deal. It's certainly not a showstopper, but we'd have to do it. But in the winter averaging, anybody who goes away for all or part of the winter have an artificially low number during those winter months. And that artificially low number might be calculated for their summer sewer volume. And Mr. Foster has commented we could assign a town-wide winter average to those accounts, which is a kind of a modification of winter average. Will require some computer adjustments. Again, this is based on an estimate, or what I call inferring the summer sewer use. Doesn't address actual additional summer sewer volume that may come from additional shower, laundry, sump pumps, etc. But when we do this calculation and we apply it across the board to all 5,441 residents, what we see is the sewer volume goes down pretty dramatically. The volume that we calculate for sewer base goes from 671,000 units down to 324,000 units, which causes the rate to go up $5.23. And everybody says, oh my goodness, the sewer rate is going up, doubling almost, 96% increase. But remember, many, many people will have a reduced number of units. So not everybody's sewer rates will go up. Okay? In fact, 3,000 people will pay more and 2,300 people will pay less.
Yeah, and Mark, if I may add one thing, when Mark says they may pay more, Tom, we're talking 50 cents in some cases. Right. I mean, we're talking pennies all the way up to a couple $100. So it's not across the board radical. It's a linear scale. You just have to see all the data to see how it plays out.
And in fact, in the presentation that went to the select board in that packet, it shows how many people would pay plus or minus $20, which it was pretty insignificant. And of that 3,096 is probably 1,000 people will pay plus or minus $20. So we have all those numbers. Okay. The third option, which would actually be option 2, is this maximum winter use. Again, we looked at a bunch of scenarios, set the summer maximum at 110% to take into account more showers and more water, set it at 100% of 5 months. Then we went to 7 months. We looked at 5 months and 7 months. And here we've got scenario 2E. Again, that's the one we've chosen for the options. But again, in the packet you have, all 5 of these, the data is shown. So we did all of these. So some of the benefits, obviously implemented across the entire town. Nobody pays anything for alternate or secondary meters. Zero water users during part or one of the winter months. It doesn't impact their summer maximum rate because it takes into account some zeros. It captures high water usage account and bills them for the sewer rates year round. I would point out that options 2 and 3 do away with the 220 cap. So we have some very, very large water users in town, people who are using 400 and 500 units of water. Believe it or not, their units will not go down with either winter or winter maximum or a winter average. They will be paying a significant amount more money. But you can see in some of the benefits and advantages we went through. And again, I'm not going to read through all of these. The drawbacks, like the winter averaging system, some operational changes. We haven't scientifically measured whether we want to go to this 110% of maximum winter usage. But again, when we do the calculation, this is the critical factor, that our sewer volume goes again from the current $671 and $2.66 to 412,918 units for $4.12, which is a 54% increase. Similar numbers, though, to the winter average. Some pay more, some pay less, And again, we've broken down, there's about 1,000 people who pay within $10 or $20 of what they were paying before. So it's not really a burden for a lot of people. And this is really the summary of the alternatives that we put together. So each column that we show here, shows the scenario 1E, which I just showed, scenario 2E and scenario 3B, the 5-month winter average. You'll notice that at the bottom, the sewer revenue remains the same. That was an obligation that we felt we had, is this had to be a revenue neutral system for the town. So I think it's important though to talk about some other findings that we had. We think the water, and Richard, please chime in on some of these. If the water readings need constant scrutiny by the water department. We saw lots of flaky numbers. There should be monthly reviews of readings with accounts that have exceptional activity. Right now we read the meters every month in town, but we don't know that they're actively going after the people who have 1 month of exceptionally high average. And there ought to be. We ought to have a system that kicks out what we call exception reports. Gee, Mr. Lacusa, your family's used 8 units of water every month for the last 5 months, and this month you used 22 units of water. Is there something going on that you don't know about? That kind of a thing. Significant variation in water use was observed. In the census, there are a lot of exceptions that handled by complaints instead of proactively. That's somewhat of what I was talking to. So really, that's really my summary. And I, again, may have run through it a little bit quickly, but the intent was really to show you what we did, that there is a lot of data. And that's the abridged version of the abridged version, if you will. The data that we got in our packet that's available to everybody has extraordinarily amount of detail on each one of those 13 scenarios, showing why we moved from scenario 1A to 1B to 1C to 1D and settled on no 1E needs to be the one that the select board considers if you go to secondary meters. Why we looked at 2A, 2B, those kinds of things. I think it's important that the data drive those decisions. And, when we started out, we said, great, we're just going to go to secondary meters. But again, you don't know who's going to put in a secondary meter. And everybody who puts in a secondary meter, their rate goes down, their cost goes down, and everybody else's rate goes up. And so we really need to make that understood to everybody. And somebody says, well, why did they do it in Springfield? Why did they do it in West Springfield? In my opinion, there's 2 reasons. One is they didn't have access to monthly data when they started. The other reason is they have 25,000 or 35,000 or 40,000, customers. We have 5,000. So for them, if a couple hundred or 1,000 people put in a meter, it's not that big a deal. For us, it's a major impact on the rest of the people left behind. And that's why the analogy I drew to whether we have a single tax rate or split tax rate is the same. We have a very, very limited commercial rate, and we know that if we make a split tax rate, it really puts a burden on our commercial balance. Well, the same thing happens with sewers. We have a very smaller population of houses, and if we go to secondary meters, it puts a huge burden on the people who can't afford to or don't put in meters. I'll tell you that, Richard and I have done looking at this thing for months now. Somebody living at home, even a family of 2 or something like that, they're going to use 2 or 3 units of water generally, 2 or 3 units of sewer through the year. Take 2.5 times 12, that's 30 units, something like that. Times $2.66 isn't bad. And if you raise it $1, it goes up another $25 or $30. That's what you get for what most people will see. But on the other hand, if it went up tremendously because of secondary meters, everybody but those people who put in secondary meters would see their prices go up significantly more. And it's not because that's what they use, it's because they either chose to or couldn't afford to put in meters. Again, it's important for people to know on the secondary meter issue that if you put in a secondary meter, you are not guaranteed that you're going to be saving money if you were already at the 220 cap. We have people who are below the 220 cap, people who are using 170 units of water a year. They'll go down to 25 or 30 units of water. That 140 units, they could save enough money to justify a second meter, but they wouldn't think that because they're below the cap. It's without the data that we'd had access to, it's very, very difficult to assess what the outcome is going to be of any one of these activities. So I've kind of given you my more than brief, I think, summary of what was an awful lot of data. I'd like Mr. Foster to give comments if he has, or answer any questions that you may have.
Yes.
The only comment I'd like to offer, Tom, and the rest of the board, it's awful easy when you look at the slides to get pulled into the cost per unit. And I know Mark hit on it several times. You notice when the total units go down, that we are selling, the cost goes up. But when you actually look at the individual accounts is where you have to look to see how much it varies. So a lot of accounts, even though it went from, for instance, my personal account, if it goes to 5 something, it's zero effect on me, on my particular family. I've looked at it several times. So it doesn't matter where that rate falls in. It just depends on how many gallons of sewage you're using. And but just don't go down that rabbit hole thinking the cheapest one is the best one, because Mark and I, we found out that's not even close to being true. You just have to look at everybody.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Stephen.
Question, 2 questions. One is, under your last scenario there, the cap goes away. Is that because the winter averaging, that's my cap for sewer usage?
Correct. For either winter averaging or winter maximum, there would be no cap. And so, we would assume that, and I didn't get into the details, Steve, but the rules are, and I actually have examples that I could show people, of putting things in. But the way it works is that for the 5 months of November, December, January, February, March, you calculate either the average or the maximum. Okay, that number, and let's say it's 3, then becomes for the rest of the year the maximum you get charged. So if in June, for example, you go to the Cape for a month, you don't water your lawn, and you're at 0, you'll get charged 0. But if in June you're watering your lawn, you're going to get charged 3 because that's your winter average or winter max. Okay, so it's the lesser of what you actually use or that cap.
Right, but so if I use 10 units, I'm going to get charged 3 for sewer and 7 for water? Is that
No. None of this has anything to do with water. If in the summertime you use 50 units of water and your winter max is 3, and for that month in the summer, you'll get charged for 50 units of water because you used it, whether it's for irrigation or filling your pool or flushing your toilets, but you'll only get charged for 3 units of sewer.
Right. Okay, I got that. Secondly, in terms of, you've presented us 2 options, essentially, some sort of winter averaging and secondary meters. Now, if there's no other actual legal other option that this town can look at, then I think we need to go forward. If there are other options, like tiered pricing, like the fact that everyone gets charged $90 a quarter, and then we have some sort of, then we go, that's because we all pay for the infrastructure. We all use it. I could use, 1 unit a month, but, we all need to have a water infrastructure. So maybe I'm, so that's part of living in the town, in any town, but this town. And so I think those have been looked at. I can't say based on what I saw prior to all the work that has been done prior to the work that you and Richard did, that anything's been accepted, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily the right way to go. So if this, I will stand by the fact that A, I admire all the work you've done, but B, I'm not sure that these are the only 2 alternatives that we have facing us. Either you have winter averaging, or you have a secondary meter. There's got to,
So there is the alternative of everybody pays the same amount. If we did that, the bill is something like $300 a per, was it $385 or something, Richard?
The
person per year.
The fixed pricing was, in terms of the old recommendation, that may not be relevant, but yeah, I mean, it's, you pay a set fee, and then you have tiered. If you have a sewage tier and a water tier. I mean, that was one of the things that was proposed and actually made some sort of sense back in the day. As I said, I'm just not sure that we have to be forced with A, either an averaging, or B, secondary meters, and that's it. That's the town's choice. If that's, so be it. And if the task force says, that's it, folks, here's what you got. These are your two choices, swell. And I will go with that. But based on what you guys have done swell work on, if we're gonna have winter averaging, I go with the max. I think we use more water in the summer, regardless of irrigation or not. That all makes sense to me. But I'm not sure we've actually, that you, with all the data that you've gotten, have given us necessarily every other option we have available to us.
Steve, you also have to remember, we're only talking about sewage. Have nothing to do with water at this point. Water does likely need to be studied, including the possibility of tiered rates and some of the other avenues. I've never seen sewage on a tiered rate basis because you can't measure sewage. We are using a tried and true method of this winter averaging or the winter max is something that's fairly universal across the country for determining what your sewage flow is when you don't have a meter, because it's based on the middle of the winter when you really never are using outside water. But I hear you going back and forth a little bit, but this is strictly sewage we're talking about. The water is a total different side of the fence, and you're right. There are a lot of options that we should look at in our community, because we have some unbelievable high users of water, and some unbelievable, and other people like my family is a very low user. And yet on our current system, I'm paying the burden for a lot of these higher users. I'm paying part of their baggage.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark, for your presentation, and Richard for your comments, and Stephen. I look at this, and it's really also, I mean, there's two issues. One is one of fairness, and people who are not putting water into the sewer system could feel it's unfair that they're paying for that water, and so we want to have a system that is the most fair one. Our price for sewage is not going to go away. We're paying $1,977,000, and that's not going to change. But I think that it also would change the look of the town, and maybe in a positive direction. That people would feel more comfortable watering their lawns, and we'd be a greener community not in terms of water use specifically, but in terms of people's lawns looking nicer. And there are certain advantages to that to the town with a policy like this. And
just remember, Tom, that we're talking sewer of 266. The water rate is 380 something. So that if they use their water to water their lawn, they're going to pay for it through their water bills, even though they may not pay for it through their sewer bills.
Right. I'm not saying there's a free ride here,
right?
But people who may feel differently, and they may feel like it would be a good. That we're coming up with a policy really that would encourage people who are now using watering systems to continue using them, instead of saying, gee, if it might cost, because it's going to save them more money. You've said that several times. So, but their volume of water wouldn't change, or go up perhaps. So, all right. So this is what we have, and I'm wondering what the next step is.
I support your March 27th town forum. I mean, I'll be
second. I'm thinking next Monday.
Oh, the 22nd. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I'd be glad to do that, and clearly we're prepared. I have a more detailed version. We've got more data than you can show. I mean, we know how many people have zeros for a month, how many people have, spikes in the month. We've got all kinds of data because the data is what we need to do to generate the system. On the other hand, we cannot design a system for 2 users in town who may be outlying and differential users from from the other 5,439 people. So,
yeah, and I think it gives us an opportunity to hear from residents because I talked to some residents who think this is a great idea to move forward in this direction of not having to pay for water that doesn't go in the sewer, and so we can hear from them and they can give you some feedback, and maybe at the end of a meeting like that we have a clearer picture of what the town would want to do. It can be tricky with this other warrant article going before the town because it people, there's only a limited number of people who are going to be able to speak at town meeting for and against this issue, and I know there will be people prepared on both sides of the issue, but it could be a pretty quick decision. So, I guess I would plan on doing the meeting on the 22nd. Is there anyone who has objection to that?
I have a question, Tom. In terms of, we have a meeting on the 22nd, and then what happens after that? We hear input from the community. We get a longer presentation from Mark and Richard, hopefully not the 4-day one, but we'll get something a little more in depth, I suppose, than what we had tonight. And then we hear from the community, I assume. And then what do you think happens after that?
Well, I think part of it is what the community says. I think that is an important part because we don't want to move too far ahead on this without people feeling like, yes, this is the right way to go. This is a good decision. And then after that, hopefully it'll be clear if we're going to make decisions as a board, or if we're going to set up a task force, or if we're just going to back off and let this warrant article and then see what happens with that without anything else sort of conflicting with it. So that's what I'm thinking, is that we wouldn't know until after that meeting what the next step would be. I don't know if other people feel the same way.
I do have a question for Mark and Richard in terms of assuming sometime before or sometime around, anyway, the select board adopts some sort of winter averaging, and town meeting says we want second meters. What happens? How do those two scenarios coincide, conflict? What's that as a possible scenario, which doesn't sound unrealistic to me?
I don't know if Richard wants to answer it. I'll take a stab at it, Steve. I think the issue would be that if we came up with a winter averaging or winter maximum system that was, either voted on or voted to begin, I think it would stave off the individual or the citizen petition, because they would come up with a system that would, purport to, and we would try to show them the data that says it would provide them the same benefit without any of the cost. And so if they were shown that, why would they move forward with something that would cost them $850 to $1,000 to install a secondary meter? So my hope would be that if we took some action, it would be a reason for them to withdraw that citizen's petition.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with what Mark said.
Mm-hmm. Now, I guess the legal question would be, if it's approved at town meeting to do this, to have a secondary meter, then could we have two different systems operating at the same time? And would that create difficulty with conflicting systems?
Well, Tom, if Mark and I, yeah, Mark and I actually had that question. We had that discussion. If we went to winter averaging or winter max, and you had a better benefit than a meter, why would anybody put a meter in? I mean, that's the catch-22 that we ran into when we look at the data. We both feel very comfortable that once people are aware of what we're talking about, that no one was going to opt to put a meter in.
Right. But there could be some people who would just say, you know, I came from a town where I had a meter. I just wanted a secondary meter. That's what I'm comfortable with. And would that...
It wouldn't impact the data, Tom.
Sometimes people don't care about data.
Right. So the answer is, if we went to a winter max or a winter average system, and people put in a second meter, we would charge the same amount for sewers, and people would have the same impact of sewers, whether somebody had a secondary meter or not. So they'd be doing that at their own, for their own money, for their own self-satisfaction. But as long as the town went to a winter max or winter average system, they would not have any additional benefit by putting in a secondary meter.
Okay. I mean, and there wouldn't be any additional costs incurred to the town in terms of, I guess the only thing would be there'd be an extra bill for that secondary.
No, but even the warrant article says we add a billing fee for secondary bills. I mean, the warrant article calls on the select board to allows property owners to install a second meter at their expense. And like I said, if we switch the billing system for sewers and they want to do it, let them. I can't imagine anybody, like I said, neither one of us can see any scenario which that would be benefit to anybody.
Okay. And Steve Morantz, do you feel comfortable with the responses, or?
I think it makes sense. If it's not going to save you any money by putting in a secondary meter, I would be hard pressed to find that many people wanting to do that. So that answer I get. My only issue is, and it's given the timing of the warrant article, I'm still not convinced that we as a town have thoroughly vetted every possibility of an alternative to what we're doing now, which I basically believe everyone agrees with. What we're doing now is not particularly satisfactory to anybody. I get that. I'm just not sure that, despite all the work that Richard and Mark have done, that is the only best solution there is. And that's why I like the task force concept still. But
Steve, I'm just going to fall back on
Richard's answer as far as that. I would agree. It would be hard pressed to we'd have both systems going on simultaneously. If we had the winter averaging and secondary meters, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Steve, I'll just fall back on this is a system that has so much variability and so much change to it year over year, whether it's a wet year or a dry year, that if we let perfection be the enemy of accomplishment, we'll get nothing done because we'll be paralyzed by the analysis.
I get that. I don't want good to be the enemy of perfection. And something is probably better than what we're doing now, but I'm not sure that I would agree. I don't think the perfect system isn't out there. That I would go with. But I'm not sure that this is, is this the best alternative? Based on secondary meter versus this, yeah. But is there a that over there? Is there something else over there? And based on all that other work that was done prior, I'm not sure that they were all thoroughly vetted to everyone's satisfaction. So that's my take. In terms of what you've done, option whatever it is better than what we've got now. That is for sure, and better than a secondary meter. I would go with those two. But I'm not sure there's something better out there. Granted that there won't be the best, the perfect. I get that.
All right. Well, we will end up this presentation, but thank you. We'll schedule this, and Lynn, if we can have this posted for a follow-up meeting on Monday, the 22nd at 7 p.m. on this issue, and we'll be further along the road and be able to make some decisions at that time based on community input. We hope that those of you who are concerned about this issue will join the meeting. It will be a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock, just as usual.
One other question, Tom, just in terms of the timing of this meeting, it's a week from today.
Yeah.
Given what I think we'd all agree is the importance of this, given that the town reminder seems to cover our meetings a week later than what they happen. I'm not, it's just in terms of publicity, that folks are gonna know this meeting's going on. You got something to say about this issue. This is your opportunity, A, to hear what's been done so far, and B, what you think. I would just be a little concerned about, is a week enough time for the public to know about this is happening? I don't know, but it seems a little quick.
Yeah, this is a month that we don't have a meeting on the 29th, Tom.
Correct, yeah, I noticed that. We could do that. I guess we could move it to the 29th. We'd have a meeting the following Monday, the 5th, but that would give people more time. And perhaps we should put out some sort of an announcement also, Lynn. Send a press release about this forum on this date, and we could do it on the 29th then. And that way we'd get better coverage, because it is going to affect every person in town. I have no problem with moving to the 29th. People feel that's a better date.
Fine.
Right? People are in support of the 29th then?
Yeah, I support it.
Okay. And other
No,
folks?
I think Steve's point was good. A little bit more news, a little bit more notice out in the community would likely help.
Yeah. Okay, good. So let's plan on that. I'll put that in my calendar too. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the warrant. We did get a memo to us from Lynn and Paul Pasturzik about changes to the warrant that have happened since the March 1st meeting. And so I'll turn it over to the two of them.
Yep, go ahead.
No, I just there's a few unanswered questions that still remain on the warrant, as was presented to you. And I also have a couple changes. I just got a legal bill in today for $54,000 roughly. So I just wanted to amend Article 3. Article 4 could probably go down, but I don't know how you want to handle it, Tom, but I do have a couple of recommended changes in some of the numbers.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't adopted any of these. Usually we go article by article and vote to put them on the warrant. I don't think we've done that yet.
No, we haven't.
Right. So we got to go through this. That's why I didn't think we were going to do the sewer thing tonight, because we got to go through this whole warrant article by article.
Right. Well, we've gone over this several times. Hopefully we can go through it quickly then. Do we want to deal with so the changes, should we just plug those in as we go through item by item then? So,
Yes, if we go item by item, we can address the changes if they need be.
great.
Right, so
Okay.
Article 1 and 2 have no changes. You could just
Right.
take those right off the bat.
All right. Do we want to put this on a screen as we walk through it? Or people want to just go through your computer screen at home? That you're in your.
Out of here, I don't need it on another screen, but people at home may want to see it.
Yep, I can bring it up.
Yeah, Lynn, why don't you bring it up?
Yep. Okay. Should be able to see that now?
Yeah, you may want to increase the size of it a little bit. For those at home, myself. Oh, no, it's getting cut off now.
No, that's good.
Can you
So
keep
we're
this
only
on
going
the,
a few.
Can you take that margin on the left side and just get rid of that? Yeah. All the way over. Yeah, there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, that'll help. So, all right, so we've talked the first two articles, pretty standard, nothing to change there. Article 3.
Do you want a motion by article, Tom, to adopt them?
So, yes, okay, why don't we do that? So we'll get a motion.
Although this year it takes a roll call vote. Why don't we do it at the end? So we only have, otherwise we'll be here all night with roll call votes.
Okay, then let's do that. So Article 1 and 2 are the same. Article 3.
Article 3, I'd like to amend to $200,000.
Okay.
And Article 4, I'd like to reduce to $175,000.
For snow and ice removal. Okay. Any questions? All right, then let's keep moving. Article 5, is that this stays the same, cleaning up the storm, correct?
Yes.
And then Article 6 is, replenishing the operation budget for forestry. That's the same number there,
Yes.
okay? Article 8,
Article 8 can be changed to $1.6 million.
okay.
Obviously, we'll renumber these once we get to that point.
Okay. So that's always a good thing. More to the stabilization fund sounds good. Number 9, rescind borrowing authorization for the landfill cap. That's pretty much, that's the same thing,
Yes.
capping, okay. And then the establishing a solid waste enterprising fund. So we'll make that change.
Let me just note for the board that if Article 10 fails, there will have to be there will be an alternative budget message. I mean, an alternative budget motion, because as it's currently written, there is no solid waste recycling enterprise fund that is currently presented in Article 11. And like I said, should Article 9 fail, we would have to reinstitute that amount of money and segregate it from the DPW.
Okay, so
I will have prepared alternates should that happen.
Okay, so if Article 10 doesn't pass, we'd make some changes to Article 11, and we'd have to propose that on the floor, correct?
Right.
Okay, and then Article 11, the town budget, select.
Well, you're gonna try to change that to say something about why there's 2 budgets proposed?
Well, I think what'll have to happen is, again, in Article 11, the first motion that is read will have to include the school board's number. But then the amendment will be read with the select board's number and with the reintroduction of the solid waste enterprise.
Okay, so
Are we expecting any opposition to Article 10?
No, we're not, but you never know.
okay. And so the only voted on issue with Article 11, so we would vote on a motion first and then on the article? Right?
Article 11.
There's a difference between the select board and the school board?
Well, again, you'll have a main motion that's going to be included, but somebody will have to make an amendment to the main motion.
Okay,
And that amendment will either need to include Article 10 or not, and the amendment to the school budget.
Right.
all right.
And we are expecting the school committee to agree with the amendment down to the select board's number? Is that?
That's what is anticipated, yes.
So, and when we have a lot of these articles, they'll have the finance committee weigh in on. Is this something that we would ask the school committee to weigh in on and say that they approve of it?
Again, I've spoken to Tom Mazza about it. I don't think that I believe he's discussed it within his sub-finance group. I cannot answer if he's spoken to the full board or if he has made a recommendation to take a vote on it to the board.
Well, I guess that's something we have to think about between now, if they're willing to do that, it would just make it a lot easier and less confusing for residents if the school committee would recommend the the budget that we're proposing. So, Lynn, I don't know if that's something you could bring up with Marty and Tom Mazza, but it would go to the school board actually, or school committee.
Paul, can I just ask that the explanations say that the select boards will be proposing a revised, an amended budget that will allow the town to maintain its, meet its goal of a 1.75% increase in tax base, so that number 1.75 gets related to why, it's not just we're randomly cutting $90,000 out of the school budget.
Yeah, no, again, I was going to revamp that by adding some more towards the end of it, and I will include certainly the select board's goal of 175 and the exact amount of what that means on the excess capacity.
Thank you.
Okay, that should cover it. So then we'll move on to Article 12, and this is for wage settlement account, collective bargaining. That's pretty much stable. Can we keep moving down? Article 13.
It'll be amended to include what you did tonight.
Right.
Lynn, your screen isn't scrolling for us.
It's because I'm taking notes and trying to scroll.
You can't do.
Would it be easier if you had me put it on?
Okay, we're there now. 13.
All right.
13, we already amended it.
Yep.
Okay. 14, air handlers in the high school. We talked about that. And then, water mains on Farmington, pretty straightforward. And then sewer lines on Jonquil, we approved that.
Yeah, on the sewer lines on Jonquil, it's currently written as a bonding. I would recommend that we could transfer this from available funds in the retained earnings account for sewer. They currently have about $777,000 in there. There'll be some other, some 70,000, I think, that is coming out of the capital projects fund. We could easily absorb this $300,000 also, because there will be a substantial amount at year end that will be closed out into the retained earnings for sewer, and they'll be back up to 800,000 when we start next year.
So Paul, would we change Article 16 to see if the town will vote to transfer from the sewer retained earnings fund the sum of $300,000?
That is my recommendation, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Does that sound good to everyone else? Okay.
Article 16, I'm kind of recommending that we also not bond for it. It's a small amount of 131.5. Even though it is a drainage project, I'm recommending that we basically just fund it out of the general fund free cash.
Okay, for Shady Knoll, Article 17.
But does that mean it doesn't need to be on the warrant?
No, it would be a transfer from available funds in free cash as opposed to borrowing.
Okay.
And that's because of the amount, the size of the amount. Okay, good. Article 18. Pretty much the same for highway improvements. And then Article 19, highway improvements. Article 20, survey design for Longmeadow Street, we talked about that. Article 21, community preservation in regard to Wolf Swamp Field. No changes. Community preservation, undesignated fund balance. So transferring money, that's pretty straightforward. And then Article 23 for community preservation committee spending. And then Article 24, Wolf Swamp, 25, carpeting stores library, 26, looking at irrigation, 27 is looking at the charter and those strikeouts, and so that's pretty straightforward. We've talked about. 28 would be approve the temporary easements of construction for pedestrian and biking facilities for Blueberry Hill.
Can I just ask Tom, what is that item between Articles 27 and 28? Paul, is that just?
That was a lingering one from over a year ago where the planning board was talking about a bylaw of ground-mounted solar exceptions. We've reached out and there was an affirmative that they were working on something, but we don't have anything yet to insert here. So if we don't have anything by the
warrant, we're not going to.
Right.
Okay. And so then we look at Article 29, easements for the.
Can I just ask about 28 easements?
Yeah, for Blueberry Hill. Yeah.
Is there any chance that we can better explain what that is?
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, at the last meeting, you asked for a map. We did receive that. We just have to insert it. We haven't done that yet.
Is that something that will be amended to the back of the warrant? That'll just say map showing Article 28?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure exactly how we'll do it yet, but it will be in there.
Thank you.
All right. And then we look at, again, the North Interceptor relocation project, which you talked about.
I've got a question on that one. There's been some real issues on Emerson Road. Would this help Emerson Road or not, this particular set of easements? No?
No.
Yeah.
This project is along the, no, this is not, this runs along the Springfield line to Emerson Road, but not, it shouldn't have anything to do with the water line, the problems they were having with the water line on Emerson.
Steve, these are the houses that back up to the highway, to the Mass Turnpike, not the Mass Turnpike, to Route 91.
Yeah.
Then we'll take care of any blocks and overflows in that sewer line. And then the next thing is wetland enforcement. This is, a bylaw, the town looking at fines, the short-term rentals discussion we've had, and then 32 is looking at filing petitions, the town clerk for warrant articles, just shoring up those dates. And then
I have a question on that one. 45 days doesn't seem to be long. I understand we don't want people showing up 3 days before saying, here's a warrant article, but 45 days does seem to be, there's a lot can happen in 45 days between whenever and whenever. Just wondering if maybe 30 days would make a little more sense than 45 days. I know where 45 days came from as a number, and I'm not sure what the number was before.
Steve, I think the 45 days came from where we had been at one time, based on dates. And even now it's due, in the first week in February or something like that. But we worked backwards from that. The issue was warrant articles or citizens petitions being delivered like today kind of thing, when the warrant's just being finalized. We thought that if there's citizens petitions that needed to be put in, they should meet this date.
Any further questions? So it's more just making sure that we have enough time to discuss every article. And as you say, we've looked at all these articles several times. So this is a petition for that. And then the next is a Historic District Commission, checking their bylaws, making some clarification on that. And let's go to 44 or 34. And again, this is by law for the tree committee.
So this one.
There's an issue with that one. Right.
Yeah, I did run this language by town council just in advance because I've not seen board membership say up to a certain number. So I just wanted to check with him on that. And he did reply, and I put that in the memo there. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it, but his response was that he was not comfortable with the up to language, as it will make a quorum a moving target, or impossible to determine. I think if you're concerned about filling all seats in the future, he would propose a 9-member board with 7 full members and 2 associates or alternates, something like that.
Yeah, Lynn, the issue was that the tree committee wanted to have 9 full voting members. And, you know, the issue for me comes down to, if it says the town should have a tree committee that consists of 9 members and there are only 7, you know, does the world end for us? That we still have 7 people, 7 voting members, and the quorum becomes, and maybe we have to say in there, the quorum shall be 50% of the active members of the tree committee, plus 1. Or something.
Well, the quorum generally, who's present at the number, you need more than half, so.
No, but generally it's not who's present. It's the quorum is half of the people on the committee. If you have a committee of 7 and 2 people show up, you don't have a quorum. If 3 people show up, you don't have a quorum.
Right.
But if 7 and 4 show up, you've got a quorum, right?
Right, so it's a matter of one different person. It's either 5 or 4 would be the quorum at that case. If it was 7 or 9.
Right, all I'm saying is, no, but if the committee consists of 9 members, but for this fiscal year, we've only appointed 7. The quorum is still 4, not 5.
Right.
So we have to add 2 members right away.
We could try to add 2 members, but what I'm saying is, if the quorum became, if the tree committee had 9 members and the quorum became 5, that could be a problem if we only had 7 members on the committee. That was my only concern.
No, it definitely could be. I was anticipating that if a member of the tree committee put this forward, then they're having more interest than they have space for.
Right,
But
that's
maybe,
this year. What's going to happen 4 years from now?
Yep.
You know, I mean, I'm more than happy to change this to consists of 9 members. Make that change. That'll satisfy get the 9 voting members on it. That satisfies our town council, satisfies the tree committee.
Well, the other thing would be that if we did it to have a 7-person committee and then two folks who were non-voting members at this point, then we could make a change like this in a future town meeting. We'd already have 9 people on the committee.
I don't follow that, Tom. I don't think we could.
Well, because if we have trouble, if we make it 7 and 2, and we have trouble keeping it full, the quorum isn't going to change because it's still a 7-member committee, but you have the input of 9 people. And then,
but they're not voting members is the problem.
Right. So then if they say, well, we've proven to the town that we can keep 9 members consistently, then we could change the bylaw to 9. But
that's what they're saying to us today, that they think they can keep 9 members, but not forever. I mean, we're writing a bylaw, we got to write it for the next 30 years, even though we don't want to. That's why I'm saying change it to 9 members. I don't think it makes any difference if there's 9 members. If we got plenty of committees. The COA committee isn't up to its full capacity. We've got plenty of committees that are below capacity. Make it consist of 9 members and be done with it.
Yeah, and then the chair would need to just make sure they got 5 people to have a meeting, prior. So I guess if they're willing to do that, I'd agree to move up to 9. I don't know if any other people have opinions.
I think it should remain the same. I think a 9-member committee, I think you got the quorum issues. I think I actually like the 7 and the 2 non-voting members who might become voting members, and as they rotate the committee, a 9-member permanent committee which would be, I believe, the first one in the town as a permanent committee. It's certainly not my first choice for committee size of any committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other comments? Well, like you said, Mark, it's not going to be something we're going to change for quite a while.
Well, the question is, what are we going to put on the warrant? We can't put, according to our town council, we can't put what it says here now. We can't put consists of up to 9 members. We either have to say 9 members, or we just remove this from the warrant and we keep the 7 we have.
Mm-hmm. So again, you know, should this be the largest committee in town? Is also another question. So they could do that.
Well, we can decide.
Do we really want to squash interest?
We can decide this now. I mean, I would move to remove this article from the town warrant. And if we vote to do that, it will. If we don't, it stays on the warrant. It has to be rewritten to stay on the warrant, apparently.
Okay, so then we'll just pull that article out until it's rewritten and then vote it in. You know, we'll talk more.
What are we going to rewrite it to, though, Tom? That's the issue.
That's true.
And if I'm following this warrant schedule, we need to get this budget. We need to get this to the printer before your next meeting.
Right. It's got to be done. We got to do it tonight.
Yeah.
So you either amend it or pull it.
Okay.
Steve Morant's made a motion to pull the article. I'll second his motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Foster, any comments on this?
No, I don't have anything, Tom.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion to remove this from the warrant. If no further discussion, we can move to a vote. Mike Barbier, will you take a roll call vote to remove? Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
So next we move to Article 35, which is another bylaw change in terms of renting bedroom space. We talked about this. And the next would be 36, which is looking at permits for the Zoning Board of Appeals and for fines, so we could capture fines. Enforcement is basically it. 37 is looking at the definition of a vehicle, which was approved by our zoning bylaw. And, you know, we did have comments earlier in the evening, and I don't know if the description, if the state description of a vehicle has to do with zoning, or if it has to do with, you know, registration or whatever. So I don't know if anyone knows exactly, you know, what the difference is between, well, I mean, there's some differences between our definition that the zoning board put together. And does anyone have any further discussion on 37 about if we should move forward with it? Or?
I believe we should move forward with the way it is. Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
Do we have the planning board? Did they approve? Well, there was some discussion about this the last time with the planning board. This was the first wording that went through the planning board?
Right. Correct. If we change it, we're going to have to go through planning board hearing again.
Well, one of the differences the gentleman was talking about was 6,000 pounds was the state's definition of a commercial vehicle, I believe is what he said. Actually, from what the gentleman said, I agree with him. I'm not sure at this point. It sounds like we have this stuff covered in other parts of the bylaws. I know, Mark, that this is an issue of yours, but
It's not so much it's an issue of mine. It's an issue that's been on the forefront in town for several years. We bypassed this several times. I think we need to let this be discussed at town meeting, because I know we heard from a member of the town just at the beginning of this meeting, but we're going to hear from other members of the town, people in town who support this, and the planning board who supports this, and more importantly, our housing department who supports having a definition in our bylaws that we can use for enforcement. Because if we pull this, we're no better off than we are now. So I'd like to see this continue to go through. We've been waiting literally a couple of years. If you recall, Stephen Crane tried to put through a definition 2 or 3 years ago, and that didn't work. We tried a different definition, and we believe this definition will make our bylaws enforceable. So I'd like to leave it.
And I think that it's a starting point, because, you know, if we don't have a definition, we can't enforce it. And I guess when you first approve something like this, you know, it's better to have a narrower focus that if you find, well, we need to expand on that, you can do that. But to take in too large of a focus and basically put pressure on folks who don't deserve that kind of pressure, you know, I would rather start with a narrow focus. So I'd support moving forward with what the zoning board has approved. So I'd like to continue it. I don't know. Any other comments?
I'd leave it.
Okay. So let's plan on that. I think we've already kind of voted on this once too. So if we move to 38, this has to do with non-conforming buildings that are destroyed by fire. So we've already talked about that. The next is looking at private garages, you know, being able to make sure they can accommodate automobiles that have, especially if it's a vehicle that is commercial, they need to garage it. So this kind of goes with that. Article 40 is looking at this proposal to change the zoning on the land that the First Church of Christ Scientists in Longmeadow.
And I'd like to make a motion that we withdraw Article 40 from our annual town meeting.
Second.
Okay. And discussion on this?
Yeah, all the zoning changes like this that we've had have all had special town meetings. The Longmeadow Shops, the Brewer Mansion has. This deserves a separate town meeting where people can attend who want to speak specifically to this and not sit through 45 different warrant articles. This has a lot to do with neighbors in the neighborhood, and I think it's important that we give this its fair due, and this doesn't try to get pushed through in a consent agenda or something else.
Well, I don't think it would get.
Can I just add to that, just so you're fully aware of that, in the climate that we're in right now, in the type of meeting that we need to hold, it is approximately $10,000 to pull off a town meeting, between the audiovisual, the overtime for staff, and the rental of various pieces of stuff that we need to pull the meeting off. I just want you to know that as you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But if we have an indoor town meeting, I assume it would be less. I assume if we have a fall town, also gonna be a fall town meeting, couldn't it? Mark, in your opinion, which has less stuff on it?
It could be whenever. I mean, if we don't put it on the warrant, I'm presuming that the petitioners will come with a petition signed by the appropriate number of people to require us to call a special town meeting, and which is what was done for the Longmeadow Shops, which was done for the Brewer Young Mansion. And if that happens, then Steve, it may be done maybe in July or August. I don't even know.
And it wouldn't be, if they do a petition, then it has to be held within a certain number of days, Steve. And it wouldn't be it would have to be an outdoor meeting, most likely. And it would cost us $10,000 extra, most likely. The other thing is, and I've said this before, that I feel like this should be in this town meeting just because, with the Longmeadow shops, when we had a vote on it and the vote didn't go through the first time, it was not approved. And then we had a second, meeting and it was approved. There was a lot of people who felt that they weren't happy with that, the way that worked. I mean, there were some people who were very happy, and now I think everyone's happy. But at the time, I don't think people were very happy. They felt like we weren't transparent, that because the vote didn't get through, there was a special meeting was held so it can get passed through. So I just soon have it happen with the whole town. It would be less expensive. And, they run the risk of people not knowing enough about this, that it may not get passed at this run. But, that's, if they have to go at it several times before they get this approved, that's their choice, really. But, any other comments?
If we could maybe come back to this one in a second. I'm getting some more information. There's some question about legally whether this can be removed. So if I can just grab this information, we can either hold or continue on.
We can continue on. Maybe you should take it off the screen and maybe so you can read your articles, and I will put if you make me a co-person, then I will pull up my screen. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right, so let me just get to my co-host. Go to screen share. Great, Lynn, so then you can do that. So let me just scan through here.
Articles 41 and 42 were citizens petitions last fall, or actually last spring town meeting, that we deferred to the fall and then deferred again, and with the agreement that the select board would put them on, and that's why they're no longer deemed citizens petitions. But I think we have an obligation based on our commitment that they be on the warrant.
Right. And so, yep. So we really don't have much to do with that. The solar panel, and then the last item.
43 is a citizens petition.
Right. There's the diagrams for 40, 41, 42 is, again, that's it. We've covered all the items. We've decided to pull the one item out regarding the tree committee. And then we're just trying to make a decision about the zoning change from a residence A1 to a district, A1 district to a business district. And the property is located on William Street and in the corner of Frank Smith Road. And
so I let me just share this screen. I am not an attorney, so I am not going to offer a legal opinion on 40A Section 5, but I do want everyone to see what it says. So it's this first paragraph here. That would you like me to read it, or Tom, do you want to read that?
Why don't you go ahead and...
Okay. Zoning ordinances or bylaws may be adopted and from time to time changed by amendment, addition, or repeal. I'm going to skip through to the relevant section. Adoption or change of a zoning ordinance or bylaw may be initiated by the submission to the City Council or Board of Selectmen of a proposed zoning ordinance or bylaw. A City Council, a Board of Selectmen, a Board of Appeals, by an individual owning land to be affected by change or adoption by request of registered voters of a town pursuant to Section 10 of Chapter 39, by 10 registered voters in a city, by a planning board, by a regional planning agency, or by other methods provided by municipal charter. The Board of Selectmen or City Council shall, within 14 days of receipt of such zoning ordinance or bylaw, submit it to the planning board for review.
And that was done, and there is a scheduled open meeting on the zoning change that we announced in a prior meeting. Okay, so I assume that it's just looking over to see if there's a section of this that will help us understand our role as a select board once it's been turned into us.
All those reasons for why we have to put on the warrant, I don't see how they were met. I mean, we did send it off to the planning board. But there was no 10 people. There was no, I mean, in terms of what they said, I'm not sure where they fit that bill.
The only shall in there was we shall send it to the planning board, which we did.
Right, and now I'm just reading the rest. I mean, 40A is pretty long, section 5 is pretty long. So.
Well, Tom, if you want to, while Lynn's going through that, maybe I can just make a motion on the rest of the warrant, and then we can, if we need to, we can always insert that toward the end, because this is going to be a very long motion.
Okay, so yes, why don't you go ahead and do that? That sounds good, Lynn. I'll give you a little more time.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we adopt the warrant as written with the following amendments to it. That for Article 3, we amend the amount to $200,000. For Article 4, we amend the amount to $175,000. For Article 8, that we amend the amount to $1.6 million to add to the stabilization fund. For Article 16, we amend that to reflect that the funds will be raised by a transfer from the sewer retained earnings fund. For Article 17, we amend it to reflect that the funds will be transferred from available funds, the amount of $131,500. That for Article 28, we have a map of the easement included. That Article 34 be removed. That as we voted, and the rest of the articles be left with Article 40 also removed unless to be added back following this motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Is Paul Pasturzik listening? I want to make sure I got all the numbers right that Paul had.
Yeah, I'm with you, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Any further discussion?
I have questions. Are we voting to remove Article 40 subject to having it put back based on what?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what we're doing with this, with the.
Yes, that's the motion.
You made a motion, Mark, to remove it.
Correct. It's
Which
not
was never voted on.
currently. It's not in there currently, but we can add it back in if Lynn finds that we should, or if we just decide to.
I don't know that I'm going.
We didn't vote it out. We didn't take a vote on it.
Well, if my motion is passed, it's not in there. We didn't vote on changing the amounts either, Steve. That's why I made the motion.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we could go ahead and just do this, and it was going to come down for a vote for the zone change anyways, it sounds like. So if we pass this motion, then we'll just continue unless unless you have something right now, Lynn.
No, it doesn't speak to the actual warrant and the articles. They followed chapter 40 and submitted it to you. You transmitted it to the planning board. The planning board has scheduled a public hearing. And then they have to issue a report on this item before town meeting, but it doesn't talk about warrant articles.
All right, so then perhaps it's too bad we don't have a full board this evening. You know, it would be nice to have that when we make this, if we have to make the vote on 40, because it's going to be, you know, it's going to be $10,000 more for the town. So I think that all members of the select board should be involved in that vote.
So you do have a meeting you set up for March 29th. If you wanted to add this item to it and have two matters at that meeting, you could do that. Or it seems like you could do a vote contingent on me checking with town council.
Okay. So what are folks thinking? Because we don't have to vote.
Well, even though I seconded Mark's motion, I'm not really up for spending another $10,000 for a special town meeting. So I'm not sure I'll necessarily vote for the motion that I second at this stage of the game. I was never in favor of having this thing on the warrant, this particular, given the length of this town meeting, but given the nature of the beast, you know, my feelings are not, you know, I'm not set in stone on this one at all. So if
you're
the
asking,
majority of the board wants it in of this, you know, I can handle that.
all right, but you're withdrawing your second on the motion?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Okay. Then the motion as it stands, is there anyone who will second it? Okay, hearing none, then we would move forward with that motion. So now I need a motion that would include all of the particulars that Mark had outlined up until we reached, you know, item 40 on the warrant, but that would include 40, all items on the warrant, including 40, except for the one that was removed, which is 34. And do we have a motion for that?
And that's with all the changes that Mark read, that Paul, I'll make that motion.
Okay. And we have a second on that?
Yeah, second.
Okay. So, again, you know, I think the only issue is, you know, delaying this process with the zone change and that we're voting on. Any other discussion on the motion before we call for vote?
Yeah, I had a
Go ahead, Rick.
Richard, yes.
Yeah, Mark's point is well taken, because Tom, you've been on the board too. These issues usually do go to a special meeting because the interest level is so great. There's a lot of time spent on this. You know, we've got a monster warrant coming in, and you know, I don't know how we're going to get through the warrant to start with. I mean, I know we're going to do a lot of consent agenda, which is sometimes a shame because these items need to be handled one-on-one. This is a very, very, very important issue to our community. I tend to totally agree with what Mark is saying, that this should be handled independently. I know there's a $10,000 price tag on it, but I feel somewhat committed to the fact that it should be a standalone meeting. I would like to get, you know, can we condition this thing and so Lynn can get a legal call on this tomorrow to see if we can push this thing off, or I feel uneasy about this one.
Okay, I think that's fair enough to ask that. What other people think about doing a conditional, the only condition to your motion would be that we wait until we heard from legal counsel.
Well, we've done it before, so I don't see why we can't do it again. You know, wait for legal opinion.
Okay, all right, and Mark
I mean, that then goes back to my original motion, which is vote for the warrant, so we got a warrant at least that doesn't have it in it. And if legal counsel says we have to put it in it, then that would ease Richard's ideas and mine, and we still have that meeting on the 29th to add it back in.
Right. Well, that's not the motion.
I mean, that's the equivalent. I mean, Steve, how else does
I'll rescind my rescinding, and I'll put back my second to your motion.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor that was approved. And now you want to withdraw your motion, is what you're saying, Steve.
Well, I think the motion of approving everything but everything that was done, with the one article removed in the amendments, and Article 40 being removed, subject to legal opinion. Legal opinion says it can be removed, it's removed. If legal opinion says it can't be, it can't. It's back on. That sounds reasonable to me.
Okay, so we have this for the person, for Mike Barbieri, who's keeping track of these. So you see that we've gone back to the original motion, that we would accept all the items with the changes, except for 40, which then we will vote on at a future date after we hear from town council. And it was
noted. I got it.
Okay, so we'll plan on that. And the other motion was withdrawn. Is there any further discussion on this?
Is an Article 34 also removed?
Yeah, Article 34 is also removed.
Yeah, that was listed. Good. Any other questions? All right, then. We'll do a roll call vote for the motion. Mike, do you want to do that for us?
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
So then when we hear from legal counsel, we will put this on the meeting for the 29th. That would be the best time. We're not going to be late for any deadlines for the warrant if we do that.
No, we should be all set.
Okay, all right.
It would go to the printer at the end of the week there.
All right, and hopefully we'll have a full board then too, because like you say, this is a big decision. It'd be nice to have all the members present. So that seems to be the end of our agenda. So we can look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, in a second?
Second.
Okay. Mike Barbier, will you do a roll call vote?
Tom?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Richard?
He could be muted.
Richard?
Richard.
He already hung up. Hold on, he called back in. Let me see.
He's here. He's not muted.
He voted already.
Oh, he already voted?
But by hanging up.
Okay, I missed it. I accidentally hit the wrong button here, guys. I'm back with you.
Okay. So we're motion to adjourn. We're taking a roll call.
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. All right, then. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Our next meeting will be Monday, the 29th, 7 p.m. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Good evening.